On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Joshua White. He's the director of SRE at the Albertsons Companies. We're going to be talking about a couple different things, but mainly we're going to be talking about what do you do when you join a larger organization and you have to shift the needle? And, Josh was doing some phenomenal things at Albertsons, and he's going to talk to us about how he's gone about trying to establish an SRE culture, how he views greenfield projects, and some of the opportunities you get at larger companies like Albertsons, and maybe those are opportunities that other people would look at. Joshua, thanks for being on the show.
Oh, love to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. And always start off at the top. I know Albertsons is a common name to lots, but if people don't know what Albertsons does, do let us know what that is. And also, as the director of SRE, what falls on your plate, and we'll go from there.
Great. Well, Albertsons is a grocery chain. We have but it's actually a bunch of different grocery chains, Safeway, Jewel Osco, depending on where you're listening from, there's likely a grocery store near you that is one of our fleet. We have well over 2,000 grocery stores across the nation. And, in terms of as a site reliability engineering director, my job is really to make sure that we have both, observability across all of that. And really, I tell people that we're kind of the glue between offshore teams that are doing some of, watching things, the development, business, and DevOps in terms of are we doing the right things? Are we going to keep our systems up? Because, it doesn't matter how cool our features are in terms of drive up and go and all the new stuff we're doing with COVID. But, if you're not getting notified that your order is ready, then, you're not going to be super excited about buying groceries again.
Absolutely. And I'm sure at this point, people have been taking advantage of new services being provided by companies like Albertsons, given the pandemic. And
it's really been, it's obviously everybody hates the pandemic, but now everybody's buying their groceries and getting them delivered. And so it's an opportunity for us in a bad scene for us to really look at how we engage with our customers and really do it digitally.
Absolutely. And I guess, obviously you joined back in October of 2020. So you've been there over a year, and you joined mid-pandemic. I guess talk to us about, maybe top levels. Like you have been in the Bay Area working for a lot of different, really nice companies. People can go to your LinkedIn. We'll post on the show notes. And what made you want to join Albertsons? Obviously, different type of company, different type of organization. But what was the opportunity you saw that made you want to go there?
There's really a few different things. I guess a plug for anybody who's joining a new company or is changing roles. Your boss is going to be so important. It's someone that can, pave the way for you, helps you grow and guide you. And I'm really like the woman that I'm reporting to. She really helps me. But part of it also is, it's funny because our headquarters is 10 minutes away from my house, and I guess it sort of doesn't matter, right? Because we're all, we're all doing this from home. But if I really wanted to, I could go into the office and it would take only 10 minutes. And, that's, as one day I hope that, we'll be back in the office, whatever that means. It'll be nice that I live sort of next to my coworkers and all of that. I guess the last thing is it's just really, as a company is growing, sometimes you can only grow as much as your company grows, right? And so, Albertsons is doing some cool new things, and we really lacked, and this is something that you wanted to talk about later, is we lacked that site reliability religion sort of. And even when I was talking to some of our friends about Albertsons and Safeway, it's Safeway here, is, oh yeah, I tried to do all the Safeway digital stuff, but, it seemed like it was always breaking, and she said, but now it's a lot better. And I think it's because we've renewed that focus, a lot of these new things, but with renewed technology and as we do, a lot of your listeners know, about APIs and microservices and all those new architectures. They need a really different kind of support. And it can't be some team in India watching to see if the dashboards go haywire and do something. It's now instead of a monolithic architecture, there are thousands of services. And, we don't know which one went bad. We just know that I signed up for an order and I didn't get my notification.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely some compelling factors to need to digitally transform as it were. And I was going to ask you, so, prior to joining, obviously Albertsons pre-pandemic had a different infrastructure. You got hired in as the director of SRE. What did the infrastructure look like when you got there? And I guess let's start there. What would it look like? What was the landscape when you joined?
I think a lot of companies are on their cloud journey, and so is Albertsons. And so I've joined other companies where because this is probably company number 4 or 5 that are going to the cloud, and I feel like, yeah, I've done that, I've seen that, I know what happens. But yeah, sometimes it's nice to be able to come somewhere and at least for certain areas say, yes, I've seen the future, I've lived it, I know what happens. You're going to have some problems with your app gateway, and you're going to have some problems here and there. But I think like any big company, there are areas that are ready, have wide architectures and all of that, and are engaging with cloud, and there are areas that we're still working on. So in the last year, we've made a lot of changes, and we're growing, and there's this lady, Chris Rupp from Amazon, that is running our digital product, and she's just pushing really hard to do all these cool new offerings. But in terms of architecture, we're still doing the same thing, right? We're still moving to microservices and all of that. What's exciting for me is how we're engaging with our observability, because that's really the bedrock of what SRE does. And as technology grows, it's not just about the architecture and what sort of software you choose, but it's really how you grow the organization. And we saw this with Agile. Agile wasn't just about continuous integration. It was about these teams that were self-organizing, and that you had a product manager there with you, and QA was there with you, and everybody was there with you. And I think our monitoring and our observability wasn't there yet. There was a central team. And I'm trying to lead that is you should never just wait for somebody to do something that's core, like observing your systems. The core monitoring team should be telling you, hey, here's App Dynamics or Datadog or Prometheus, and you have all these choices, but it's your thing, right? And my thought is give them the tools they need, and that's the DevOps model too, right? Like just put it in Jenkins, and magic will happen, and it'll get deployed to all the places you needed to get deployed and tested and all of that. But as part of the tax for that, you have to make sure you have your unit tests updated and all that. And the same as for observability, is we're really trying to make sure that those dev teams are on the hook for, starting out with up-down monitoring. And Google wrote this amazing book about SRE. And then, I'm kind of enforcing that our teams are reading it. And even, for a long time, when we first started, we had an SRE book club, which totally ground up. One of the engineers is like, yeah, I read the book and I want to talk about it. Yes, 100 times yes, please do that, right? And so it was, each week we would go through and, we would pick a chapter from the book or an area from the book and really talk about it. Because Google does it one way. And, just like I was a big part at Gap of their agile transformation. And it really made a big impression on me because I was a consultant for a while, and I saw dozens of companies and what worked and what didn't work. And agile really made sense of just like, yeah, just show them what you did and keep showing them. And, it's no surprise that now I'm still showing them what I did, right? But it's a different sort of showing them. But we went through it and compared what Google did and what Albertsons is currently doing. And then, at the end of each of these sessions, we would figure out what Albertsons should be doing. And they really appreciated, I think, that the answer isn't always do what Google does, right? Because we're not a search engine, right? We're a grocery company. And we have, Google doesn't have like inventory and, a toilet paper problem whenever there's a new COVID strain, But yeah, I think it's part of what I like to do is make sure that all those engineers know that they're setting the pace, right? That they get to make those decisions, that they're not waiting for me to tell them. I think that just in general, that is so critical for leadership, is to say, look, I trust you. And that's, I mentioned before how I really, I enjoy my leader. I would say, hey, can I do this? Can I do this? And she said, Joshua, I trust you. Just go do it. And then that's really what I want to do with site reliability here is trust our developers. Say, yeah, I trust you. Show us what you can do, but also make sure that they have the armor, they have the, on-call schedules and all that. I want them to know that we have their back, that, maybe their stuff goes down in the middle of the night and we might have to call them, but we're still going to marshal the support teams and DevOps and infrastructure and make sure that, they have, the best team possible when they have to get up and, because their platform broke.
Absolutely. I guess an interesting thing you mentioned, you set up the SRE book club, which sounds like, you were educating the team, helping upskill and bring some of those ideas to the table. And you mentioned obviously having to, you work with your manager, and there's a kind of educating the organization in terms of the capabilities you're bringing to them. How did you go about that part, and kind of how did that start becoming, part of your day-to-day? Obviously, the SRE book club, I was going to ask you if you continue that, but we'll come back to that.
Sure. So I guess your question is, how do I take we take some of our learnings and move them into how we work as an organization.
Yeah, I guess how did you help the organization understand the need for some of the observability components that you were going to need to build up a team and bring those capabilities to the company as a whole? And obviously, you have other stakeholders that need to buy in, budgets and all that kind of stuff.
It's interesting because it's not just one thing. I think that, and again, any big company, there's always, unless it's Apple and there's one guy who's making the decisions, it's making decisions together and really. But the way you can make decisions together is really about communication. So, in terms of, observability and site reliability, we have a lot of these new product managers who have seen it work and, they're from the future too, right? They said, yeah, well, we should have, we have all these things, right? And sometimes the answer is no. And we have to do that evaluation and figure out, what that software looks like. And at the same time, going back into, the depths of our command center and all of these teams that are used to a different way of interacting with our production systems. So I really think of myself as a mediator in that. It's just, and so, be able to solve both their issues of one, hey, I need to get this thing out right now, but it can't go down because, we announced the Albertsons media thing where we're going to sell space everywhere, but, that kind of thing has to be really reliable. But at the same time, it's like, oh, but then do we have to hire more offshore teams and stuff like that? And hopefully the answer is we don't have to hire that much more that we can leverage. And that's the promise that we can come and we can take from that SRE book of, Google doesn't have a zillion people supporting all their systems. They just have, really smart, technologists that, look at it. And the book talks about how you should have called once per shift, and it's just like, our teams look at that and we kind of laugh like, yeah, right. And I've gone to these conferences for operations where they talk about this. One woman mentioned this great concept. She said, it's almost like you have this on-call pain suit. As soon as you're on call, you're getting slammed all the time, And so there's these two very different views of being on call. And I really think of it as a continuum, right? Is I am certain that in every company, there are people in that on-call pain suit, right? And a lot of times they end up in supply chain and they're not right in the front, right? They're in the back, like making sure that packages happen and deliveries happen and all of that. But really, I want to be able to give them the tools and give them the concepts, right? Or even just working with their management to say, what's the business case for having more of those folks or more tooling and all of that? And I think that SRE is sort of a businessy team. And I'm lucky enough to be the guy who talks to all the product people and tells them what's wrong each week. I'm the angel of death. And so, but using that relationship, I get to talk to them about, really, okay, I want you to pick a service level agreement for your new platform. And then I can come back to the, DevOps team and say, all right, well, how much DR do you, disaster recovery, how much high availability do you need for this? And then, just be able to broker some of those discussions because they don't always happen. I think that's how you get to the on-call pain suit is that they never really thought of that. And the project's over. So, figure it out. Right. And so when you're at the very end of that chain, you just end up with stuff. And so I want to make sure that I'm the guy, 1-800 got junk guy. Right. And it's just like, there's a lot of junk and my team is there trying to dig them out. I joke with my team, you don't own anything, right? You own production, but you don't actually own anything. You've got, the development teams that own their application. You've got, the support team that owns some of the care and feeding of it. You've got DevOps who owns the infrastructure, but we own that relationship. And so, in terms of RACI, we're accountable for a lot, but not as responsible.
I guess, just to touch on something you mentioned, the team as a little bit more aligned to the business and the business goals. Mm-hmm. I guess when you're, sitting down and having those conversations and, somebody does need to offer, a grocery pickup because obviously there's a driver for that. What part of the conversation do you get involved in? I guess, how early or kind of what stage does your team get pulled into that?
That's a great question because that's part of my goal is to be involved in more of those conversations, right? I mean, starting out, it's, hey, why did you do this? And, you're killing your team. But yeah, you're right. The way to get to, nirvana of, our offshore teams, like sipping a tea and talking about their day instead of being on fire all the time is really to be part of those initial conversations. It depends on the team, but I really try to, in these COVID Zoom box ways, try to be a part of their lives and just at least just when they see my face telling them about how, this latest thing broke or, you had a big outage or whatever it is, that they know that I want to help them get to where their platform doesn't have that problem. And the conversation should be when they start the project, like, okay, what's the customer view of this? What's the operations view of this, right? You should have an operations model for everything. And that includes your service level agreements, your air budgets, all these fun SRE concepts, which a lot of them know, the people that are planning. But if they don't, I'm happy to be that educator. And that's really where, the book club kind of got to is it's not just about choosing your own adventure in terms of your team that is growing, like we started out as just level 3, but really now, we're being able to get on this platform where we can drive reliability across our digital properties. But the other thing is once they have that ownership and that knowledge, they can be educators. And so, that's really how I want to win. And that's how you transform is not just me being a talking head, but having dozens of talking heads and in all of the different meetings of saying, the project's doing great. I'm really worried I don't see any up-down monitoring, or what happens if this goes down? Do we just call you, development leader person? Hopefully that's not the answer. And so having those good conversations before, 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, when the stuff hits the fan.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, your on-call paint suit definitely does not need to be busted out.
And I wish I remembered that lady's name. It was at a PagerDuty conference, but her other anecdote was there's just 3 of them on call, and they were on call all the time, and it was really horrible. And she was having a baby, and she was like, "Somebody needs to take my shift." And the other 2 people said, "No, we're too tired." I'm like, oh my God.
Wow.
At that point, if you're having a baby, don't pick up your phone.
That's got to be an interesting story. Somebody's got to share.
Wherever you are, there's someone else that's having a worse time, right? And so, but the good thing about her story was, she used on-call and she used observability and PagerDuty to change all that. And some of it is just about showing out what's happening because you don't know what you don't know. And so I feel like, SRE in the end, it's about reliability, but it's really about communication, which is what so much of what we do is, right? Is just, I want to be able to be super clear about, hey, your platform sucks, right? And here's why. And here's what you can do to change it. And that's never a fun conversation, but to be able to have a productive conversation about it versus just saying, yeah, you've had, 9 outages in the last 2 weeks. It's, hey, here's what your on-call looks like. Here's what your observability looks like. Maybe we should talk to your product owners about having an error budget, and maybe they shouldn't release any features until it doesn't suck anymore. That's the goal, right? And so, and with politics and, different levels of people in the organization, it doesn't always happen exactly that way, but we're getting there. And so that's what's exciting to me. And I think maybe they just tell me I'm right, but I think my team is excited about it too.
Too funny. You mentioned something about, obviously showing out the team's abilities. How do you celebrate the wins? Because obviously, as you mentioned, you are the bearer of bad news sometimes. But when the team is executing and you'd like people to know about it, what do you do to bring some of that glory or some of the adulations to the team when they're performing well?
That's a really good question too. And you're right. It's like, it's not that we're only happy when it rains, but we do stuff when things break. And it goes back a little bit to the company wins when we don't have outages, but our wins might end up being this team was really bad and this partner really failed us, but we did the right thing. And so I celebrate some of those as wins, really. I try to incorporate that in every day, just whenever there's something happening, there's somebody that did it and I want to recognize that. So, I think in general company, and I'm actually also on the engagement team for digital. So, that's something that we think about a lot in terms of, did you get an award? Or, the sort of big team recognition and awards are okay. And a lot of the management stuff goes back to when you're in the middle of doing it, that's when you want to hear it, right? It's like, hey, this call that you're running right now, you're killing it, right? And so to be able to give people that instant feedback, I think is super important. So yeah, I think that it is this weird dichotomy of like when things are going wrong, things can be going really well for us because we're showing our value and we're bringing the ship in, right? We're, whatever it is, we're patching that leak, whatever metaphor you want to use, but we're just trying to make it better. And there's two different ways we make it better. There's when there's a problem, we're there to help and we're there to make it better. But what we really, really want to do is peacetime, right? In peacetime, we're there getting ready, and making sure that we have that observability, the service level conversations, et cetera. So yeah, I think it will likely be both forever, right? And so, but in terms of congratulating people, it's just knowing what people are doing and working with them. And sometimes it's just, meeting them for a beer or whatever it is, right? I mean, everybody has a different thing that excites them about their job. And so I just try to let them do that thing and tell them when they're doing great.
Awesome. I like the strategy, especially, I guess, it's a little bit different because obviously when the dev team ships something, everyone sees it and it's easy to recognize.
Yeah, exactly. And they have that big email of like, oh my God, all these people are great. And SRE was there too. So yeah, but they're there for everything. But yeah, and I think that it is a culture shift, right? SRE has always been a culture shift. But the other thing is, like I don't, and maybe I should never say this as an SRE director, but I don't want heroes, right? Like sometimes we get to be heroes, but like heroes means, there was a villain and the villain's us, right? So, if you have to go and somebody set that building on fire, right? And that's what I want to know. I want to know is who is the person in charge of keeping that building from catching on fire in the first place, right? And so those are the heroes to me is, these people that there's two, we call them business service managers on one of my teams. And one of them is the hero, right? There's a call and he jumps in and he knows all the stuff and he saves the day. But the other one is she came from a project management background, slowly, quietly making sure that all of the KB articles are lined up and that all the teams know what and she's the one that's keeping the building from catching on fire, right? And so, I mean, it's important to have those different kinds of people on the team. But ultimately, I want to hire more people that are, keeping things from catching on fire. And that's what we like to do with site reliability.
Absolutely. And you mentioned culture shift. I guess one thing to just get your insights on is, Albertsons has been around for a long time. Obviously they've been doing what they've been doing for enough time where it's working really well for a number of years. And you're seeing the digital transformation side, and you're talking about culture shift. What's that look like? I guess, and the reason I'm asking is from the outside looking in, like, let's say, you're somebody who's like, hey, I'd see that job posting as the director of SRE at Albertsons one day. And, I'd not apply to it because it doesn't maybe sound as sexy as working for Tesla, but you're doing some interesting stuff. It's really exciting to be able to deliver some of these net new capabilities for a company as established as Albertsons is. But that culture shift, there's got to be something to it that you've got to be, I guess, open to or want to be a part of, because you are bringing some of those capabilities as part of the reliability team.
And it's hard because there's no culture is bad. And really, when we're talking about, Albertsons bought Safeway 5 or 6 years ago, I think. And, there was a Safeway culture and an Albertsons culture, right? And so, we have these different cultures under one umbrella. And I think I recently read that, that there's really, every team has its own culture, right? And the fact that a company has a culture is a bit of a myth. And for me, it's, I work with the technology the most, right? And so we have this technology culture. And, a lot of it is, there's a lot of new folks, and they come from all sorts of, Macy's and Gap and Walmart and all of these other companies that I've, worked for or worked with. And they have that sort of can-do retail culture, which is great. But there are some folks, one guy on my team just celebrated his 20th anniversary at Albertsons. And it's just like, wow, 20 years ago. Like, I'm sure there are people working for us that, weren't, well, they were still born 20 years ago, but, it's been here for a really long time. Right. And that's great. Right. I'm glad that he has been able to, change his career and adapt and that he can be on my site reliability team. But, he has a different perspective than someone that we hired last week that came from a company that is, lives and breathes agile. And, sometimes we're agile, sometimes we're not, right? We have a lot of different pockets. And really part of that is I have a personal view of like, yeah, I want us to be agile and go fast, but not faster than we can. And, but really, I can't tell all the other teams what to do, as much as I'd like to. And it's about asking for what I need. I won't necessarily ask for iterative development, but I need to know what you're doing every week so that I can react to that. And if you can show me, that's even better. And, if you ask for that, then you get an agile team, right? And so part of what I want to do with SRE is, if I keep asking for observability, if I keep asking for what is their service level availability, service level agreements, or, all of the SLs, service level indicators, then, they'll start to think differently about everything. So I think it's just asking for those outcomes and then letting them get to it themselves, because it shifts the ownership versus Joshua said so, I don't want to do it, versus, oh, I understand why you want to do this. So I think, culture will always be slowly shifting, and there's a lot of different teams and we do things differently, but it's really, as long as it's shifting in a positive direction, I guess, and we do it the right way, I think there'll always be a spot for the 20-year guys and, the 1-year guys.
That's awesome. I love it. I mean, especially, the person with 20 years experience and has been able to evolve and, modernize and grow with the team is phenomenal, because he knows exactly what's not worked in the past.
Right. We say he knows where all the bodies are buried, right?
He knows where every single body, and that in of itself has tremendous value. And it's a testament, I guess, to the organization and himself, actually, to making sure that he's kind of pushed through from, what was there before to what is now, and, being a contributing member. And seems like exciting stuff, man. Like, I mean, I think a lot of people probably will relate and understand some of the features that have come out, and some of the stuff you've talked about is some of the activities that, we probably don't appreciate because we see the end result, but you're doing the hard work, and it's probably a really cool job. And
I think the coolness comes from, we always use software to fix issues. And I think operations has not always been the beneficiary of that. And so this is really, to me, this is kind of agile for operations, or DevOps for operations. And so, we really want to use software and automation to fix a lot of these problems, and so I know, and I've talked a lot about observability and on call, which seems very operationsy, but we're a super technical team, right? And we have to understand all that architecture, and we have to be able to hold that team accountable, that, deep in the bowels of network or or the cloud or whatever. So we have to know enough about that to not only, work with them on their observability strategy, but, really have advice about, we kind of have to know everybody's job. So yeah, it is exciting, because you do get to, for me, I've always struggled. I've been an app developer for a lot of my career, but I don't know everything about network, right? And network has changed with cloud anyway. So, being on those troubleshooting calls and working with all those teams gives me an opportunity to continue to learn as well in my technical journey, as well as my leadership journey.
That's awesome. I love it. It sounds like it's exciting stuff, and sounds like you're really enjoying what you're doing, which is even better. And if somebody wants to reach out because they have a question or just a follow-up from anything you said, what's a good avenue? Is LinkedIn a good place to reach out to you, or any other?
Yeah, definitely. LinkedIn would be great. I'll watch extra.
Cool. We'll include it in the show notes. I think you talked about a lot of really interesting subjects, and hopefully percolates the conversation. If somebody's interested in joining Joshua's team, obviously reach out to him as well, because I'm sure SRE is growing and burgeoning everywhere, and he has needs. But thanks for being on, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Well, thank you for this. This is really, really cool. This is my first podcast, but you really put me at ease. I appreciate that.
You are awesome. Thanks for your time. And that's it for this episode. We'll be back again. Different guest, different topic. Until then, I always ask for two things. One, if you like the episode, if it's helped, share it. That's how we've been growing. And I thank everyone who does that every week. And if you want me to talk about a specific subject, please let me know on LinkedIn or email, or however you like to get a hold of me. I'll try to find a guest to speak to that topic. And until next time, goodbye.